Assalamu alaikum everyone and a very warm welcome. Today, we're jumping into a straight-up masterclass in reason, right from the pages of the Quran. We're in Surah Ash-Shu'ara, where the Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, doesn't just argue against idolatry, he completely dismantles it, piece by logical piece, using nothing but pure, clear-headed reason. Let's see how he does it.
Now, to really get what's happening here, you gotta shift your perspective a bit. This isn't some fiery sermon. Think of it more like a calm, surgical takedown of a deeply flawed idea. Ibrahim isn't playing the part of an angry preacher. He's more like a philosopher, armed with the most powerful tool you can have, a hammer made of pure reason.
All right, so let's set the stage. What makes this story so incredibly powerful isn't just what is said, but why it's being told in the first place. This isn't just some ancient tale being recounted, it's presented as momentous, significant news with a very clear strategic purpose behind it.
You see, the Quran kicks off this story with a very specific, very powerful Arabic word, naba. And that's not just, a story. A naba is big news, a significant report. This one word is a signal to us, telling us to lean in and pay attention. What's about to be said isn't ancient history. It's a living, breathing argument that is just as potent today as it was then.
And this is where the sheer genius of the Quran's approach really shines. You have to remember who's listening to this for the first time. The Quraysh of Mecca. They were so proud to call Ibrahim their ancestor, yet their central practice was idol worship. So what does Allah do? He uses their own hero, their own revered forefather, to expose the massive flaw in their theology. It's a masterstroke of rhetoric, really, forcing them to confront a huge contradiction right at the heart of who they claimed to be. Okay, so let's get into the dialogue itself and watch how Ibrahim builds his case. His opening move is a class in precision and self-control. It's such a simple question, but believe me, it's designed to be absolutely devastating.
The precision of this question is just incredible. He doesn't start by attacking them, right? No, why are you so misguided, or how can you worship stones? Instead, he asks this really calm, almost diagnostic question: what is it that you worship? This move forces them to be the ones to define their own beliefs. He's making them put their cards on the table first. It's a brilliant, brilliant opening.
And their answer? Oh, it tells you everything you need to know. They say they worship idols, and here's the crucial part, that they remain devoted to them. Notice what's missing. There's no reason why, no mention of what the idols actually do for them, no talk of any power or benefit. Their entire justification is just habit and devotion. So right away, Ibrahim sees the opening. Their foundation isn't truth, it's just tradition.
And now we get to the heart of the argument. With their position now out in the open, Ibrahim applies two simple, logical tests to the very idea of their gods. This is where he brings out that philosopher's hammer we talked about.
He lays down this two-part logical gauntlet, and it strips the idea of divinity down to its most basic, non-negotiable requirements. First up, the awareness test. Can your God even perceive you? And second, the agency test. Can your God actually do anything? Let's break these down.
The first test is for awareness. Do they hear you when you call upon them? It's so fundamental, isn't it? A being that's worthy of your worship, of your prayers, of your deepest hopes, has to, at the absolute minimum, be able to perceive that it's being worshipped. If it can't even hear you, the whole relationship is just a one-way street to nowhere.
The second test is for agency. Or do they benefit you or harm you? Think about it. If something has zero power to affect reality, if it can't bring you any good or protect you from any harm, then it's functionally powerless. It's an object, not a deity. Ibrahim is saying that anything without this power is automatically disqualified from being worshipped. It's a clean, logical cut.
So with both of his logic tests failed, their position is completely cornered. They can't claim their idols are aware, and they can't claim they have any real power. So they're forced to reveal the real, unvarnished reason for their entire belief system.
And there it is, the ultimate defense when reason has run out of road. They admit their idols can't hear, can't help, can't harm. Their entire justification boils down to one single thing: tradition. We found our forefathers doing it this way. This is the intellectual white flag. It's the moment the whole argument just collapses. This slide just lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have Ibrahim's case, which is built entirely on evidence in reality. And on the other side, you have their case, which is built on ancestry and tradition. It's a timeless conflict, really, a worldview built on conviction versus a culture built on convenience.
So, what do we take away from all this? Well, this masterclass in argumentation gives us a powerful toolkit for how to think critically and pursue truth, not just in theology, but in every single aspect of our lives.
Ibrahim closes with this brilliant rhetorical pivot. He asks, "Then have you truly considered?" The Arabic phrase here, afara item, implies so much more than just a casual glance. It means, have you deeply reflected on this? Have you really thought through the conclusions we've just reached? It's a powerful invitation to just pause and let the truth land. And this is the toolkit Ibrahim leaves us with. It's so practical. First, ask clear questions. Then, define your terms. Know what you actually believe. After that, test those claims against reality. Have the courage to question tradition when it doesn't have the evidence to back it up. And through it all, stay calm, stay rational, stay principled. It's not about winning a shouting match. It's about letting the truth do what it does best, stand on its own. And that leaves us with a final, provocative thought to consider in our own lives. Ibrahim's dialogue forces us to ask ourselves, at what point does our loyalty to tradition stop being a virtue and start becoming an excuse not to do the hard, necessary work of thinking for ourselves? It's a timeless question and one that is definitely worth reflecting on.